I'm very honored to add another friend, another great international guest, Mr. Greg Lambrecht, founder of Coravin. Hi, Greg, and welcome.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you both?
Good, good, good. You know, we are in Milan in a safe environment because, as you perfectly know, we are doing the Milano White Wheat with new rules, but we have so many people connected to this moment from all over the world using our digital winefair.com. So we are proud to give a demonstration, as you perfectly know, that we can go on talking about the wine industry and the future of the wine industry.
Well, thank you for having me. And it's I got to say that COVID-19 and the pandemic have created this crazy environment, but it's also an opportunity for us all to innovate, as we heard in our last two speakers. So I really think that if it's our responsibility to draw as much good out of this crazy experience as we possibly can. I think the wine industry has a lot of potential that's being created right now as a result of these changes.
Absolutely. So, Greg, what is for you innovation? Then we will go to when you decided to create the Coravin idea. But what is for you the term innovation?
You know, I've done a lot of thinking about that. So I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, and I had a long discussion with a fellow entrepreneur at a conference, an innovation conference in San Francisco, and we spent the evening drinking wine and talking about exactly this. And we studied three terms: invention, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And I think it's easiest to understand what innovation is by looking at those three. Invention is the creation of something that's new and potentially useful. But that doesn't mean that it's changed behavior. It hasn't altered reality because it's just an invention. I think of that when I invented Coravin. I was in my house and it was 1999 and I just wanted a way that I could drink from any bottle that I owned whenever I wanted. So I made one. I invented it and I came up with one, and it changed the way that I experienced wine, but nobody else. Innovation is when you take an invention that has the opportunity to disrupt, change, or add to a field or an activity or an experience or culture and actually make it happen and spread it throughout the world and actually change behavior and add a new behavior, add a new potential opportunity through that invention. And I'm going to come back to that in just a second. And then an entrepreneur is different from an inventor. An inventor comes up with an idea, and an entrepreneur is one who actually makes it happen. They don't need to be one and the same person. It happens to be the same person with me, but they don't need to be. In coming back to innovation, I was really struck. I heard will.i.am, musician, innovator, educator, multiple company starter. He described a very important distinction in innovation. He said disruptive innovation is something that comes into being and makes it so that whatever was happening in the past will no longer continue as it did. And he said there are kind of two types. There's one that adds exclusively to that environment. So a creative innovation, disruptive innovation, is one that sees a new opportunity, creates this new opportunity without destroying anything. It creates a new pathway of enjoyment or experience or healthcare or whatever it is, or education. He said, and then there's disruptive innovation, and those are ones that take an existing industry and, because of its existence, destroy it. And you'll see that, for example, with Uber and Lyft. They made the taxi cab industry no longer viable or as viable, and destroyed a lot of jobs. And actually, because neither of them is profitable, may have taken a profitable industry and destroyed it and replaced it with one that's not. So I've focused my life on innovations that are additive, positive, non-destructive. And I hope that that's true with Coravin, that it expanded the way that wine could be served and sold, taste it at home, taste it in restaurants, taste it in the winery, without displacing anything or anyone, just creating new opportunities.
Luca, tu rappresenti il più...
Luca, you represent the most important Italian consortium, and it is very important to see how what you are making, governing such an important mechanism as this consortium, which is based on a product which is one of the most important Italian assets around the world, and not simply the world of wine. It's very important. So what is the innovation language you are speaking as a consortium in the wine industry in terms of communication, but also in terms of giving support to your members, to your wineries? Well, our innovation is in our approach, that is, being a consortium, at least what I try to do and how I contribute to my consortium with my staff. I enjoy, and I often say it, I enjoy a 3 years experience in the field of consortia. I am an expert in consortia in the food industry before. I was in a board together with Grana Padano, Parmesan, Parmigiano Reggiano, Gorgonzola cheese, and San Daniele ham. In that system, I learned how great food consortia are working, how they plan, how they manage production, how they make research. This year, I will allocate significant amounts of resources to research. And we will do the same with our innovation for the year, that is the Rosé Prosecco. This is something that started many years ago. We checked what our wineries were making with those types of wines, and we tried to standardize it, work together with universities, with wineries, and so further and so on. So this is my background. And then it's the fact of having economic resources to rely upon the most credible players, the ones that can accompany you throughout the innovation process. Innovation is the ability to find solutions, as was said before, which are not necessarily solving issues, but they are meeting demands, they are fulfilling expectations, and when it's something really ingenious, they are creating new needs and new requirements, new expectations. Coravin, until Coravin invented the system, we didn't really perceive the need to have something that would give us the opportunity to drink a bottle of wine over a longer period. He's giving us this opportunity, and now we enjoy this opportunity. Now we have this available, and we feel this need, we feel this requirement, and that is what the real genius is. In our regions, we have huge potential in the world of wine, and we must be able, as somebody else said, that we must be careful, because none of this, all these processes are based on history, on tradition, but you start from history, tradition, and then you go on, you go forward. In the Prosecco sector, until somebody started with the Martinotti, the Charmat method, it was a totally different world. And I'm not talking thousands of years ago, it's just the late 19th century. So that was innovation. Before, Prosecco was totally different, but that was not betraying the tradition. I do not... Well, it's in Italy, roots are meaningful. So we need to understand that you shouldn't betray your traditions, but you must add innovation. Innovation, which is also the herald of times that change, that evolve, that develop, with new needs, new expectations that must be met and fulfilled.
The idea was born. You told me a couple of times, but when did the idea was born and what you're trying to put in the new ideas? I think you will have something new to communicate today. But what is the fire? When you innovate, you have a fire inside. You have something, exploding, and that becomes, then reality. That becomes a project, an object, like you did with the Coravin. How can you go on innovating when you already did an incredible innovation, as the Coravin is for the wine industry?
Well, thank you very much for your kind words. I think it's exactly what Luca was talking about. You create new opportunities through the innovation, and Coravin has created new opportunities. And I think that lets you see the potential for even more opportunities if we could create something else. When I founded this company, I remember saying we want Coravin to be faster, easier, more fun than opening a bottle, independent of closure. And you've seen that we added the screw cap edition. Recently developed in working very closely with the Australians. And then we also said still or sparkling. I would love to be able to come home and drink a glass of rosé Prosecco on a Tuesday, and drink a glass of rosé champagne on a Wednesday, and drink a glass of sparkling wine from Australia or the United States on a Thursday, and maybe have cava on a Friday. And I don't do that because an open bottle of sparkling wine goes bad in two ways. It oxidizes and it loses its carbonation. So at Coravin, we've launched a new product every year. We're probably the pandemic has resulted in the incredible team that's here. I'm at Coravin headquarters, by the way. This is our kitchen, and my mask is right here because I have to wear a mask unless I'm talking or drinking. But the team here doesn't stop in innovation. If we see an unmet need, we will create a solution that will expand the opportunities to drink, serve, and sell wine, still or sparkling, independent of closure. And I'd say that the pandemic has been one of the most productive inventing times. You take a bunch of engineers and really good marketing people, and you isolate them at home so that they can't go out. And when they're working in wine, they start thinking of things. And so you'll see more new product launches from us this year in the first few months of next year than I think we've ever done. So we won't be done. There's a lot of work to do.
Allora, diciamo che Luca, toccando lei.
Therefore, Luca, touch wood, so touch wood. So we can say happily that Prosecco right now seems to be one of those products. Please don't look at Giavi because, well, it seems that Prosecco seems to be immune to the crisis, protected from the crisis, because sales data are far more, very much reassuring. But I think that we cannot think to stop this trend, and in any case, the promotion and the activities on the market. I think you should actually relaunch it even, because I think that spreading the name of Italy across the world is a fundamental role, not only for your product, especially at this very moment in time. Oh yes, let me make a couple of comments. So before I called my colleague and I asked him an update, and in the first 9 months of this year, we are losing 1.4%. And export over the first 6 months, therefore during the COVID period and lockdown, up to that moment, we had 4.7 for exports, and France is at plus 35%, and is our fourth market. So as to investments, very easily, last week when I was talking to the ministry, the ministry confirmed the intention to fund OCMs as much as possible. And when I saw that they were keeping the maximum fund fixed, I said, well, if we have to be anti-cyclical, we have to invest more, and therefore that plus you give us will enable us to invest. And so we should invest more than in previous years, and so we don't want the same amount. So if there are potentials and there are resources to be anti-cyclical, let's go for it. And I have to say that much to my dismay, I was the only one who raised the problem in this respect, because many were happy to pay instead of 50, only 40 or maybe 30. No, I want to keep spending the same amount, but I want to do much more, to be present and to grow. Also because unfortunately, well, this is something that we didn't say today so far, that since we have more channels these days, and therefore we have to be present in many more areas, where in the past it was enough to have a TV set, and I mean, in the past you would see the TV just from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. You know, I'm 50, I'm old, and I know those days very well. Well, I have gray hair, and everybody say I'm more than 50. So I tell you that I'm 48. Though in any case, you had that, you spent that period of time watching TV, and you could see everything. So in that prime time section, you had all the potential broadcasts. Now, on the contrary, you have segmentation by age, by country, by this and that, and therefore to control and to, because our product is very transversal, because of course if you sell an energy drink, your target audience is very, how can I say, tiny, so to speak. But for a product like ours that has a huge potential, as data confirmed, so we can have a potential customers from 18 up to 90 or infinite. Well, that's much more difficult, and so you have to be more cross-functional, and so choose channels depending on age ranges, and that requires a lot of money.
Vision to present tonight, but in the wild, can you tell us the story of Coravin? How the things went between the Model 1 and the latest innovation that you will present us today?
Oh, it's interesting. I was looking at the first prototype I made back in 1999, and it was hard to use, and it looked like a weapon. So it's come a long way because of a lot of great people. The goal has always been the same: pour wine from a bottle without opening it. And it sounds easy, but there was a lot of testing. So before I founded the company, I spent 11 years testing wines from around the world and different needles and different gases. I work in medicine, and so I was running 2 different companies at the time. So this was the thing I did on nights and weekends. My wife didn't drink the same wines that I did, and so we needed a way that we could drink different wines without opening 2 bottles. And actually, she wanted to try 3-4 different wines. I wanted to try 3-4 different wines. So on a Tuesday. So that was the freedom that we were looking for. And when I founded the company, after we got the technology right, the needle, the gas, the pressures, and the ease of use, we launched in 2013. And in the United States in 2014, in Europe, 2015 in Asia. Now we're in over 60 countries worldwide. And the original model that came out You still see it today. We build it like my medical devices. I never want it to break. I want it to last forever. And so they're still around. In Italy in particular, there was restaurant usage in Italy is one of the strongest in the world. I would say it's London. Then you would go to Milan and Rome and Florence and the rest of Italy. Hong Kong is very big on using it. Sydney. So we have customers now all over the world, and we tried to make innovations from the original model to do two things: to make it even easier to use, more consistent, and so we've got now the Model 3 and the Model 6, and then a digital Model 11, which pours itself, used in a lot of restaurants. So we wanted to make it easier to use, and then the other thing we wanted to do was make it more accessible, less expensive, so that people who were drinking casual wines could afford to enter into the Coravin way of drinking, having a glass of white, a glass of red, hopefully a glass of sparkling wine, any day of the week, to do pairings at home, to be able to taste the wine before bringing it to a party or an event to make sure it's okay. And I think what you'll see in the future from us, our major innovations were launched in 2015, then 2017 with Model 11, or 2018, and then now, and screw cap in 2016. What I think the biggest challenge for us, and that we work on every day, and I have to say it's the hardest thing I've ever done, is working on sparkling wine. And it's my dream that you can drink a glass of sparkling wine, maybe 3 glasses of sparkling wine, leave maybe a glass or 2 remaining, and come back to that wine 2 weeks, a month, 3 months later, and drink the rest of it. Not so that you're preserving the length of time that you can drink that one bottle, but more so that you could have 6 bottles of sparkling wine open in your fridge. That you could have a glass of one of them on one day and another one on another day, or another one on another day. It's that freedom to drink exactly what you want any day of the week in the quantity that you want, without having to think about when you're going to drink it again. Those are the innovations we're going to keep doing. And I have to say, innovating in Coravin is fun, right? I mean, if we're going to launch a sparkling product, I have to know that it works on Rosé Prosecco, right? The latest innovation. And so I've got to find it. I've got to buy it. I've got to test it. I've got to make sure it works with Franciacorta. I've got to make sure that it works with Cava. I've got to make sure it works with Champagne and all the different styles. So for me personally, I get to meet great people. I get to taste great wines during the testing. If I wasn't under COVID and I was allowed to travel, I would be with you guys. And if I had prototypes of a sparkling system, I would travel back with Luca to Prosecco, and the Prosecco region, and I would introduce it to all the winemakers, because that's the way that any new innovation should be done. My belief is that we use Coravin on your product, on the winemaker's product, and if they like it, then it's okay. If they don't like it, we need to fix it. And that's the one thing I miss in this innovation phase, is that lack of ability to travel freely, to meet with winemakers and have discussions with them over how we can make these products the best for them and for restaurants and for wine stores and wine bars and for the home. So now let's start talking about the last innovations. I start with Luca. Luca, we know that in the next days there will be a new product coming that, of course, is promoted, but is practically already sold, which is the Prosecco Rosé. And we are honored to have the possibility tonight to talk about this new amazing project, connecting another very important Italian product, which is the Pinot Nero with the Glera. But I leave you.
Allora, innanzitutto.
Well, first of all, I have to dispel a myth. This is going to be a new product. definitely, but of course that complies with our rule book, of course, because most of our wineries were already making rosé, and of course if a Prosecco brand with the same layout makes a rosé label, even though they write vino rosé, so rosé wine, in the imagination, in the mind of consumers, we made a survey in the US and UK, and most consumers believed that that type of wine already existed, even though it didn't. And so we have to make it reality, and but we have to make it according to our rule book. So to define the varieties, the admitted varieties, and then the territory and the production techniques. And actually, the first step in this project was to monitor what our wineries were doing with rosé wine. And we actually saw that most rosé producers were using Glera and Pinot Nero. Glera and Pinot Nero that were already admitted in our rule book. But before, Pinot Nero had to be vinified in white. And therefore, we included the possibility of having vinification in red, and therefore this makes it possible to create a cuvée. And also then the next step was to conduct research to have a stable product over time, and we realized that we had to keep in the autoclave for 2 months, which is generally twice as much, so twice as long compared to the Prosecco that we normally make. And therefore we prepared, so we changed the rules accordingly, and this amendment, this change was approved in last August in the official Gazette. And all in all, by mid-October, the product will be available in Italy. Then we'll have to wait the publication by the official Gazette of the European Union to then market the product and export the product outside Italy. Let me only tell you that from August on, currently, we have more than 10 million bottles in production. Well, you always start with small numbers. Oh, yes, we always start with very tiny, no, jokes aside. Of course, so with the recent harvest that we will bottle from January 2021, that will be the first official year of Prosecco Rosé. And I think that figures will be remarkable. And I think that we will be in the order, so we will be... we will make the same results as other denominations in France and in Spain. So, and if this happens, we should be in the order of 40-50 million bottles.
You have something for us, I think. You have something innovative for us. We are waiting for this moment. So we presented a great Italian innovation. Now we need a great international innovation coming from the Coravin family.
I think if I were to say something, I know the marketing people at my company would shoot me. So I am not able to announce what we are about to do just yet, and I apologize for not being able to do so. And as an inventor and as an entrepreneur, especially in wine, the excitement that I have about what we are doing is off the charts. I can say this, at my home, I have 6 bottles of different sparkling wines that are open, that I am drinking 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months since I opened. And if you think about the way that Coravin was invented the first time, and I think a Coravin sparkling will be as much, although different, as much an innovation as our original Coravin was for still wines. The freedom that I have to be able to drink a glass from any bottle of sparkling has changed my consumption of sparkling wine completely. I used to drink sparkling wine during special events or on a weekend, or when my partner, she and I were going to drink the full bottle, and that's the only wine we were going to have. Now it's the first glass every day. It is absolutely the first glass every day, and it never has been in my life, but it is now. So it's my consumption of sparkling wine has gone up dramatically as a result. In my belief, every day is a day worth celebrating, and there's no more celebratory beverage than sparkling wine. I have to say that I was with a sommelier from a Michelin-starred restaurant in DC, and she served me a glass of Prosecco Rosé, and it was excellent. I don't know how she got her hands on it. It is an Italian restaurant, so she has friends, I'm sure, and it was truly spectacular. So I'm looking forward to that being commonplace here in the United States, where Prosecco has been a disruptive, positive innovation, as you know. You've changed the consumption of sparkling wine in my country, in the United States, by making good sparkling wine accessible, and I think Prosecco as a whole has raised the image of Italy and the Italian wine producing regions of Italy in the minds of Americans, and in particular in young Americans, which is fantastic. Congratulations on that achievement. And I know that during COVID-19, the consumption of wine in the United States has gone up 17%. So one of our largest rises in history. We don't like being trapped at home, and apparently we're drinking well while we are. So I can't announce yet, but you will be seeing a couple of announcements in the near future. One not related to sparkling, probably in a couple of weeks, and another one potentially related to sparkling. But I think that you will all appreciate that when Coravin launches something, we want to know that it works perfectly. And so there's still some testing I need to do to make sure that it truly works perfectly on everything.
Yes,
and
of course.
Testing is I get to drink more wine.
So, Greg, the only options we have is to come and visit you in your house and to try one of those 6 bottles for now, okay? I got it.
You are welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's interesting, è sempre interessante, Luca, parlare.
It's always interesting to see this innovation coming over from other countries. And for instance, Coravin was originated from an area where technology is at the center, like in California. And this is very stimulating, very interesting from this standpoint. How can we in Italy make something similar? I mean, I'm convinced, as I said in the previous talk, I believe that the growth of our the value of Italian wine depends on the growth of what revolves around Italian wine. And I mean the growth of wineries that are very innovative, that use technologies and use tourism and marketing, and that build all that value proposition around wine, which is key for the wine business. So how can we go about creating that? Because that we would like to have that in Milan. We would like to have a sort of Silicon Valley of wine in Milan, with but also incorporating all the other functions that revolve around wine. For instance, tourism and the like. Well, first of all, let me thank Greg for the very kind words that he said for our products and for the role that he has acknowledged to Prosecco in spreading sparkling wines across the world. Thank you, Greg. And I think, it's all about a change in mentality. So we tried that. We said, we kept saying that we had to create a network to enhance our system and work systematically. So, when there are resources available, we try to use them. So today we can all do something for our system. So there are producers associations and organizers, national organizations, and also ministries, authorities and bodies here what we need to know is to become aware that we have to work differently. Because this morning when I heard about the COVID measures and COVID initiatives, I said, well, for my sector, I don't think we don't need anything special. I mean, we support those that need other sectors. And actually, I am at... Here we are here at the headquarters of Confcommercio, and I said our companies will just have to have enough liquidity to survive and pay for the wine that we have shipped our customers, restaurants, and so on and so forth. And so, everybody was trying to receive money, funds to do they don't know what. On the contrary, we want to do the opposite. We want to invest. We want to make sure we have enough liquidity and collect data. And so I keep saying, let's collect data, let's collect information. And based on this, let's decide. For instance, my family is a family of farmers, and they were always focusing, for instance, on the best cow they had in the stable, and starting from the best cow they were working and trying to make the most of it. So now on the market, there are various players. And so those who have the best solutions, the best ideas, let's take them and let's invest all together. That might seem simple, but if I look at other wine regions across the world, since I love Italy, I don't want to mention other countries, but so we want to, for instance, so you send wine to whoever asks you for wine. And generally we send wine to Sicily, and whereas in other countries people just work more closely together. And that's very important, and that happens in Veneto and in Sicily. But so we have to work together. So we have to support our own local system, because on the contrary, we do the opposite. So the further away we go, the better. But that's wrong. So we should work closely together, even though we are all competitors. So we shouldn't be afraid of our competitors next door. We've got to work together, and we've got to work with producers in Slovenia and in neighboring countries. So come over to see us, come to my house, and I can tell you about what I do, and we can share, we can talk about, for instance, Prosecco Doc and difference compared to the Conegliano Valdobbiadene denominations that make products similar to ours. And then, of course, you can taste Trento or Franciacorta or Oltrepò-Pavese, which I love, and I think it's the Italian champagne, Oltrepò-Pavese. Oh, that's strong. That's a strong statement. And the Oltrepò-Pavese is suffering a lot. And I hope that now that they have a new director at the Consortium, and I hope they are more lucky. But what matters is to change our mentality and choose the best, pick the best, and invest on that. We have the great potential. But then we don't do that, and that's a pity. That's a pity, and and that's very sad. I'm old, I'm 49, as I said, but I can still make the most of that. But this must be a change in mentality. And then we have to work in this way to, for instance, now there are also other type of other new consumers, so we have to attract them. So, for instance, when we launched the idea of rosé, it was a great pleasure for me to see other rosé producers who told me, we're happy you're doing it, because Italian rosé needs to be spread across the world. And then you make Prosecco rosé, I make Bardolino rosé, another one makes another rosé, but then we will sell together, and then we will join forces, and that's key. That's definitely key. And for instance, the French said, oh, great. Well, we like the Prosecco trend because, as Greg said, they could know better the sparkling world, the sparkling wine world, which before was only for celebrations and parties and so on. Then they tasted Prosecco. They hope that, of course, they taste also their French sparkling wines. We hope they stick to Prosecco, but never mind. Because, I have my model. My model is not the same that can be used in France. For instance, I always asked to the Bordeaux producer, and how can they have so many price ranges? Well, because the prices can be so different, and sometimes the product is the same, but the prices are so different. And this is true, for instance, in Bordeaux. And so you have 3.5 euro wines and 3,500 euro wines. And that's a great vision. That's a great project. It's all inclusive. And that's what we have to have. Great projects, great vision, and do that together. And then also work on occasions for drinking wines. That must be our target on which we have to focus, especially for Italian wines. Yes. And so since we talked about innovation, let me say something interesting. You know that already, but Greg doesn't know about that. Let me tell him. May next year, we will launch the first international festival of Aperitivo, the Aperitivo Festival. And therefore, we will be talking about the moment of the Aperitivo, which is so very important for you, for Prosecco, for the Prosecco world, and also the world of users of Coravin, and also customers in general, private customers. For instance, the Aperitivo is becoming a very important moment of the day. It is even replacing dinners, the Aperitivo. And the true story, allow me to say something important. So, when there are, we are drinking wine at home much more than in the past, and therefore our competitors are beverages in general. Therefore, the beer, non-alcoholic beverages, and therefore different players, because certainly restaurants are very wine-driven, 90% of cases, especially in some types of restaurants, but all the rest, especially home consumption. I think in Germany, they sold less wine because they drink beer at home, and so they drink wine less because they don't go out, because they drink wine when they go out. So that's interesting when they go to the restaurant. And so it's very interesting to see these dynamics and consumer behaviors. In any case, Luca, sorry for interrupting you. In any case, we will have to invest the same. We can't invest more. We can't invest on your festival as well. Okay, we'll see, Federico says. In any case, one of our key success factors is versatility of our product and the possibility of being drank in different occasions. I mean, I don't need to eat to have a glass of Prosecco. I can eat anything to have Prosecco. And it's very close to contemporary cuisine, like big salads and pizza and so on. And so it's very important to pay attention to competitors. Take beer, for instance, as you said, not only wine competitors, but beer producers, breweries worked extraordinarily well by joining forces. And I think that wine producers are promoting their world, so the world of beers. We haven't managed to produce the world of wine as a whole, and that happened back in the 60s and 70s. So we are very late. Why was that true? Because there were big players with very advanced visions, and they worked very hard together. And for instance, we have to recover ground, and we should work together. For instance, the pizza. Take pizza. In Italy, unlike other countries, where in Italy we drink beer with pizza, almost exclusively beer with pizza, and we have to work on that. And when I talked with my partners, they said, well, I don't want to deal with pizza. No, that's wrong, because we have some pizzeria that cost as much as a good fish restaurant, but the perception was that the cheap pizzeria. No, but now we have great pizzeria with wonderful pizza makers like Franco Pepe and others. We had many interesting initiatives around pizza here in Milan. So there are great pizzeria, and Savino too. So there's a lot of work to do in that area. And then all for instance, the low alcohol beverages can have a great future. And in that area, we can do a lot. For instance, someone talked about vermouth. And I don't think that anybody drinks vermouth as such. It's always mixed. You drink cocktails with vermouth, and you need good vermouth to make a good cocktail.
Lucky guy with the new wonderful Coravin. No, Greg, just the last question to you while you are tasting. What are you tasting now?
So I was tasting a Barolo that from Berlotto it's 2007, and I poured it 5 years ago.
Okay,
and,
not bad.
I just noticed it in the fridge, so I thought it might be appropriate for now. And then of course I grabbed a Rudy from de Montillo. That's French white. I like French white.
Just the last question to no, say.
I just wanted to say that Luca is singing my song. I am such a believer now in pizza and sparkling rosé. It is the perfect pairing. I don't know that I've had a better one. I will never drink beer with pizza again. I'm completely sold. A friend of mine introduced me to it, and it's changed my life. So,
we will send to you some bottles. I will be very happy.
I will send some Coravin, I promise.
Okay, Greg. We are still in an emergency time, of course, in many parts of the world. And I know that Coravin totally changed even the marketing strategy. You can't understand how much we missed during this Milano Wine Week, the Coravin tastings, because they were amazing meetings, amazing tastings, and we seriously hope that we will have back this way of communicating even for Coravin 2021. We turned so much in the digital side. How are you working in the two different channels to support in one way the restaurants that are the Coravin houses, having the Coravin wine lists, and in the second way, of course, how are you working on the final consumer?
It's a great question. And I have to say, we have written, I think, 5 3-year plans this year. starting in January, another one in February, another one in March, another one in April. It feels like every month of the COVID pandemic is a year in business life. And our team has done an amazing job, absolutely amazing job of navigating this. So we're in 60 countries, and we're used by consumers at home, and we're used by restaurants, and we're used by wineries. And one of those countries is China. And so we saw the pandemic hit China as restaurant sales vanished. I think then it swept across Europe, and restaurant sales disappeared in Europe. And in Europe, restaurant sales were half our sales. And then it came to the United States, and the United States vanished. The U.S. is our biggest market. The restaurants vanished, which was devastating. And sommeliers were laid off and furloughed, and as were the staffs of restaurants. The people that we knew, we didn't know what address they were at. We didn't know what their emails were, because they'd been laid off and their emails were shut off. So this has been an incredibly intense and challenging year. For us, we were able to pivot immediately to the consumer from a sales perspective. We used to sell in big stores. Those stores were closed. So we pivoted online, as you mentioned, very quickly. And despite the disappearance of sales in big stores and sales to restaurants, our sales are up pretty dramatically this year. And it's because of the consumer at home. And it's because of the incredible shift to online purchasing that has happened with COVID-19. And I think that's a shift that's permanent. I had never purchased groceries online before COVID-19. And now I do it almost all the time. That's a behavior that won't change when COVID-19 goes away. So at Coravin, we're trying to think, okay, so now we've settled our business and we sell online. And we sell to the consumer, and now some of the bigger box retailers are coming back, and some of the restaurants are coming back, although I'm not sure it's the same in Italy as it is our country, but we see them come back and then shut down, and then come back and then shut down. And now the winter is coming, right? And so everybody was eating outside, and now they're not going to be able to. So, and the pandemic is coming back in the United States, and the cases are rising again, like in France. So the restaurant world is going to be unpredictable. What we have done for restaurants is contribute to charities. So we contribute very strongly to the Independent Restaurant Coalition here in the United States to support individual restaurants that were left behind in the government subsidies here. We contribute to sommelier funds that are doing things like paying rent for sommeliers that are out of work. And we are inventing products for them when they come back. And I think Coravin has relevance to them because now they're Wine by the Glass program. They never know if they're going to be open or closed. So, Coravining is one way to make sure they don't have any waste during this crazy time. The way that we have been innovating on channel is with the consumer. And it's my belief that wine is moving more and more online. Wine is moving more and more into the young generations. And we need to follow that. And so we have moved to social media, intensive advertising and experience. Wine is ultimately about an experience. And so we want to connect with that experience more than just show our product. What is it like to relax with a great glass of wine? Aperitivo, what is it like to sit at home and create the experience that you had in restaurants by having a great glass of wine with some charcuterie or some jamon or some cheese. What we've seen is this shift to more being at home and by the consumer because they have to, but they've also gotten better at being at home. They've elevated their life at home. They're eating better, they're cooking better, they're drinking more sparkling wine, they are pairing wines with food. And so I think what you're going to see from Coravin from an innovation standpoint is going to be in communication as well as in product. How do we connect with that consumer who wants to elevate their life at home with the beverages that they're drinking, with the tastings that they're doing, pairings at home, all those things they used to do at restaurants, having a wine by the glass program at your house. Have 12 different wines, maybe 4 of them are sparkling, whites and reds, and be able to serve different glasses to different people because Coravin is there. So our communication has definitely shifted, and it's shifted globally. There are some changes that hit the United States, that hit Italy in a very similar way, that hit China in a very similar way. So it's difficult, and maybe it's hard to think past the pandemic clearly. And maybe things will turn to exactly like they were before. But it's our feeling that they're not. People are still going to go back to restaurants. They're still going to want that experience. They're still going to want, but they're going to have a better elevated life at home. And we want to connect with that better elevated life.
Okay. Thank you very much, Greg. So we are finishing the long marathon of Wine Generation Forum. I think we have to be very happy because we had many interesting and stimulating conversations today with people creating a very interesting melting pot, talking about wine with from different point of views and melting and mixing their different experiences. Of course, it's important to not stop today, Greg. We told this to all of the speakers. This is just the beginning of something that we have to work on all the year long, using the digital side. We have digitalwinefair.com for the next months, in which it would be impossible, of course, to move, to fly, and to connect in a physical way. But in general, we want the Wine Generation Forum to become, a new place where the people meet, where the people connect, where the people grow. Because it's very important to, especially in this period, to focus all together what is changing. And I'm very happy for sharing this wonderful day with you, Greg, with Luca, who made possible all of these with the Prosecco Doc Consortium.